Montico Brown and PCE members were at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Now, the Buffalo Wild Wings, where are we talking about? Where's that located, John? Now, were you looking that particular night for Montico Brown?
Well, earlier that day, I had an incident where he was in a carjacking vehicle that ran from me, and subsequently we couldn't find him after he fled the scene.
So you knew it was Montico Brown, but you weren't able to get your hands on him at that time, so you're looking for him later that evening?
Correct.
So you were advised that Montico Brown was at BW3, or Buffalo Wild Wings, I apologize.
Yes.
And did you respond to that location?
Yes, I did.
And again, this is at the River City Marketplace off Airport Center?
Yes.
What did you do when you arrived?
What I did, the squad and I, we formulated a plan to go up and try to, see if Montico's up, or, find Montico. We got a couple of K-9 units en route, and we kind of set up around the restaurant to see, to survey anything, see if there's cars driving around or where maybe looking out for the police or anything like that. So that way, when we got there, we could try to take them into custody.
And so you're basically setting up around Buffalo Wild Wings in order to see what you can see?
Yes.
So what did you specifically do?
I specifically directed our squad mates around to where to park at, and what I did is I was approaching the building. In my vehicle, I got a call from Detective Howard. I kept getting updates periodically by the phone. Once I got to the near the location, Officer Howell called me and says, "Hey, they're getting ready to leave the building." So I informed all the officers are responding, and I kind of parked a little bit closer to the front of the building. That way, I could hopefully see them when they came out.
And so, just so we're clear, the vehicle that you were talking about involving Montico Brown from earlier in the day, that's not the same vehicle that we're talking about that was related to the murder of Aiden McClendon?
No, it was a Dodge Avenger taken in an armed carjacking over off of 103rd Street.
So you're advised that Montico Brown is going to be leaving Buffalo Wild Wings, you're set up, and were you able to see anyone come out of Buffalo Wild Wings?
Once Detective Howell said they're coming out, I could see about 10 or 15 individuals come out. As he said, they're walking out, and then once I was able to determine that the group that he was talking about, I informed all the other squad members that they're walking out.
So from the location where you were you able to see the individuals' faces at that time?
No.
Were you able to see general clothing descriptions?
Yes.
When the individuals came out of Buffalo Wild Wings, how many vehicles did they enter into?
Once they started getting in cars, there was 2 vehicles.
And the vehicles were parked where?
One was parked, there's a red SUV parked kind of closer to the door, and then there's a smaller 4-door sedan kind of parked 10 or 15 spots north of it, so I really didn't have a good visual on it for a make and model. I could see the car pulling out, and I alerted other members of my squad to say, "Hey, this is a car that they're also in."
So you see the 2 groups of individuals. One group is getting into what you described as the smaller car, and the other group is getting into a red SUV?
Yes.
Did you update the other officers that were with you as far as that there were actually 2 vehicles that were
Yes.
at play? Could you tell at that point, you're looking for Montico Brown, which vehicle he specifically had gotten into?
Based on the description I was giving, I believe Montico had been based on the description I was given, I had reason to believe that he was getting into the red SUV.
The red SUV, and was this a red Tahoe?
Yes.
Now, just tell us what the description was that you had.
Black male wearing all black clothing.
So as a result, what happened with the red SUV? Did it leave the parking lot?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I informed the members on my squad, the 2 vehicles were leaving, and designate what officer is going to stop which vehicle. And so I took the lead and said, "Hey, I'll be one of the ones that stops the red SUV along with 2 other officers," and then the remaining officers stopped the 4-door sedan.
So did you follow the red Tahoe out of the parking lot?
Yes,
And the other team of officers follows the small car?
correct.
What did you see when you got behind the red Tahoe?
I was the second vehicle behind the truck, so the traffic stop was based on a busted rear left tail light that had a white light illuminating from it.
And that's a traffic violation?
Yes.
What happened when the red Tahoe was stopped?
We stopped the vehicle. We conducted a felony takedown.
When you say a felony traffic stop or a felony takedown, what does that mean?
Felony stop is nothing more than a high-risk traffic stop where we don't place ourselves in danger by walking to the vehicle, knowing what may be present. So what we did is called each individual out one by one.
And why was it conducted in that way?
Because based on the information that I have received from Detective Howell, Montico had a gun on him, and also that earlier in the day that Montico had fled from an armed carjacking vehicle. He also left the scene of a traffic crash, which is also a felony. So based on the knowledge that I had, I knew that I had reason to believe that there was a felon in that vehicle, and that's why we pulled him out that way for officer safety.
All right, so did the red Tahoe pull over?
Yes.
At that point, were you able to determine who was driving the vehicle?
Yes.
And who was driving the vehicle?
Henry Hayes.
Do you see that individual here in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Could you please identify him?
A young black male wearing a blue shirt and a gray tie.
Your Honor, if the record could reflect that Officer Poole has identified Henry Hayes, the defendant in this case.
The record would so reflect.
Henry Hayes was driving. Who else was in that red Tahoe?
Cynthia Hayes, Kwame Richardson, and Rashawn Jackson.
Cynthia Hayes, do you know that that is Henry Hayes' sister?
Yes.
And who were the other two?
Rashawn Jackson and Kwame Richardson.
Do you recall where the individuals that you just described were sitting within the red Tahoe?
Based on Henry being the driver, I knew where he was at. Based on the description I was given of Montico of all black, I saw that individual get into the right rear passenger seat. I vaguely remember where Kwame was sitting and Cynthia was sitting, but I do know that Henry was the driver and Rashawn was the right rear passenger.
All right, so once you are starting to get these individuals out of the red Tahoe, did it turn out that it was in fact not Montico Brown that you thought was sitting on the rear passenger side?
Yes.
Who did that turn out to be?
Rashawn Jackson.
What did you do with the individuals as you got them out of the vehicle?
Once we called them out one by one, we had them sit on the sidewalk.
At that point, did you ask Henry Hayes for consent to search the red Tahoe?
Yes.
Did he give you consent?
Yes.
At that point, did you search the vehicle?
Yes, I did.
As part of that search, what, if anything, did you find?
Part of that search, I went through the vehicle, and then in the rear passenger or the rear cargo area of the truck, in a 5-gallon bucket, I found a Glock pistol.
A Glock pistol?
Yes, sir.
What, if anything else, did you find?
Well, it had a magazine in it, but that was already in it. But other than that, nothing that would indicate that I need to take possession of it or anything.
Your Honor, may I first witness?
Yes, sir, you may.
I'm going to be showing you what has been entered into evidence as Exhibit 299. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize this to be?
The Glock pistol I found in the truck.
And where was this located?
In a 5-gallon bucket in the cargo area of the pickup truck, or the SUV.
Your Honor, permission to publish to the jury?
You may.
Your Honor, of course, just noted for the record, the previous motion.
Yes, sir. Noted.
you conducted your search of the vehicle and found this firearm, were you wearing gloves?
Yes, it was.
And why do you do that?
To preserve anything that I may have found that doesn't put my fingerprints or DNA on it.
And so when you took it out with the gloves, did you then at that point put it into a sterile bag?
Yes, it did.
And again, what's the purpose of that?
To protect it from any other outside contaminants for DNA or touch prints.
And at that point, did you take the firearm to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office property room?
It was taken, yes.
And did they package it in a box for admission into the property room?
Yes, it was.
Now, I want to kind of go back to the scene. Did you question the occupants of the vehicle about the gun?
Yes, it did.
Did Henry Hayes take responsibility for possessing or owning the firearm?
No, he didn't.
Cynthia Hayes?
No, she didn't.
Sustained.
No, she didn't.
Sustain the objection.
Kwame Richardson, did you question him if he possessed the firearm?
Yes, it did.
And what did he say?
Didn't know anything about it.
The individual who didn't know anything about that firearm, do you see him here in court today?
Yes, I do.
Could you please identify that individual?
He's wearing a dark-colored suit jacket, short haircut, black male.
Your Honor, if the record could reflect that the witness, Officer Poole, has identified Kwame Richardson, the defendant.
The record would so reflect.
And to be clear, you specifically asked Kwame Richardson if this was his gun.
Correct. Yes, I did.
What did he say?
He said he didn't know anything about a gun.
Was Cynthia Hayes placed under arrest at that time?
Yes, she was.
Related to an outstanding capias, but not related to that search?
Correct.
And so she was arrested. As also part of your investigation, did you collect the video from Buffalo Wild Wings?
Yes, I did.
And when I say video, I'm talking about surveillance video from the restaurant itself.
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I don't have any further questions for you. I apologize. I do want to show you some pictures. Jumping the gun. I'm showing what's been admitted into evidence as States 253. You recognize this photograph?
Yes, I do.
And what is this?
The red SUV we stopped that night.
Now, in fairness, these photographs are taken at a later date and time, not at the time that you actually found the firearm in the red Tahoe.
Correct.
Showing you States 254, what are we seeing here?
The same vehicle.
This is showing a driver's side shot of the vehicle.
Yes.
States 255, what are we seeing here?
The driver's side of the vehicle.
States 256,
The passenger side of the vehicle.
States 257.
The busted left tail light.
And this is the busted taillight that you were talking about related to pulling over the vehicle in the first place.
Yes.
States 258. Tell us what we're seeing here.
The rear cargo area of the SUV.
And again, this photograph is taken later in time, so the bucket's not in this actual photograph.
No.
Could you show the jury where the bucket was located within the vehicle by circling it?
Yes. Behind the rear passenger bench.
Was it right up next to the seat itself?
Couple inches.
Your Honor, if I could approach the witness.
You may.
Officer Poole, I'm showing you what has been marked for identification purposes as States 21P. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes, it's the front passenger compartment of the SUV.
Your Honor, at this time, we move to introduce this into evidence as States
531 for Richardson and 534 for Hayes.
531 and 534.
Any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
Any objection, Ms. Wright? All right, then be so admitted as those respective members.
In this last photo, what are we seeing here?
The front passenger compartment of the vehicle.
Could I have one moment, Your Honor?
Mayor.
Your Honor, no further questions.
Morning, Officer Poole.
Good morning.
You stated that this date was February the 7th, 2016. Is that correct?
Correct.
You were the second police car following the red Suburban. Is that right?
Yes.
Whenever the traffic stop was first engaged, the car or the truck pulled over immediately, did it not?
It did.
It didn't try to flee or elude, is that right?
Correct.
And you stated that my client gave you consent to search, right?
Correct.
That's voluntary consent, is that correct?
Correct.
And you stated my client said he did not know anything about the firearm, is that right?
That's correct.
Now, was there more than one police officer that searched this truck?
I was the only one that searched it.
Pardon me?
I was the only one that searched it.
You were the only one that searched it?
Yes.
You do a thorough job when you search a vehicle, is that right?
That's correct.
In other words, you check every place in the vehicle, is that correct?
Correct.
And you found the firearm in the back, in a bucket, right?
Correct.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Wright?
Officer Poole, you indicated that you stopped the red vehicle because you believe Montico Brown was in that vehicle. Is that correct?
The vehicle stopped because of a busted taillight.
Okay. But you were following that vehicle because you believe Montico Brown was in that vehicle. Is that correct?
Based on the description I was given, yes.
Okay. But you knew you couldn't just stop him for that reason. That's why you said that it was stopped for a busted taillight. Is that correct?
The vehicle stopped because of a busted taillight. However, Montico Brown fled the scene of a hit-and-run crash, which is a felony. So therefore, it makes him a felon. So therefore, I could stop that vehicle with or without a busted taillight.
Okay. Now,
If I believe that person's in the vehicle.
I'm sorry, sir?
If I believe that person's in the vehicle, yes.
But you believed him to be in the vehicle because he had on all black clothing and he's a black male.
Based on the description I was given.
Okay. And so when you saw that group of members of PCE coming out of Buffalo Wild Wings, was there more than one person who was dressed that way?
Yes.
Okay. So you just chose the one you thought was Montico Brown?
I had to.
Okay. Now, you indicated that you conducted what you call a felony traffic stop. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you indicated that did you have your gun drawn? Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And it was more than one officer conducting that felony traffic stop. Is that also true?
That's true.
Okay. And all of you had your guns drawn. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you made each of the individuals get out of the vehicle one by one. Is that correct?
Correct.
At gunpoint.
Correct.
And you made them get on the ground, sit on the ground?
There was a previous state that had them walk back. We searched them, had them sit on the sidewalk.
Okay. Now, after all of that, you're saying that Mr. Hayes agreed to allow you to search his vehicle?
Yes.
Now, you indicate that you don't quite remember the placement of the persons within the vehicle. Is that true?
As I stated, I do know where Henry was sitting, and I do know where Rashawn was sitting.
Okay. And Rashawn Jackson, he was sitting in the rear passenger side of the vehicle, is that correct?
Yes,
And he was closest to the firearm, is that also true?
true.
Now, the firearm that you recovered did not have an extended clip, is that also true?
I don't know of any weapon having a clip.
I'm sorry?
Weapons don't have clips.
Weapons don't have clips?
No, ma'am, they're magazines.
I'm sorry, did it have an extended magazine? I'm sorry.
No, it didn't.
Why were you searching the vehicle?
See if there's any drugs or guns in the car.
Okay. So you were specifically searching for guns, is that correct? And drugs, but one of the things you were searching for was guns, right?
Correct.
Did you, and you indicated when Mr. Hernandez asked you that you looked everywhere in the vehicle? You looked everywhere in the vehicle where a gun could be located, is that correct?
If it were accessible.
Now, during your direct examination, you said that the photographs that we have were not taken on the day of the incident, is that correct?
I believe that was stated, yes.
Okay, so you didn't take photographs of where and how the gun was found, is that also true?
That's true, that's true.
And when you stopped the vehicle for the light, you never issued Mr. Hayes a traffic ticket, is that correct?
It was a written warning issued.
I'm sorry?
A written warning was issued.
Okay. What'd you do with it?
It was given to Mr. Hayes.
And that warning was for faulty equipment, not a broken taillight, is that correct?
It's the same thing.
Okay, but there's a specific statute for a broken taillight, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And that was not included on your paperwork for the reason for the stop, is that correct?
I'd have to reflect on the reports that were written.
I don't have any further questions.
Redirect.
Yes, sir. Is a broken taillight and faulty equipment the same thing?
Yes, it is.
You were asked some questions related to how thoroughly you searched the vehicle. Looking at what states Exhibit 21T, did you pull back the carpet of the passenger side front carpet right there that we're looking at?
No, it didn't.
How come?
It's a beat-up truck, torn carpet, torn seats. It's common. It doesn't heighten my sense to say maybe there's something here, but if it was a brand-new vehicle with torn carpet, displaced carpet, then that would alert me to say that something's, isn't correct, and I would make sure I look there.
One last question. Are magazines interchangeable on firearms?
Yes,
So I can have a long magazine one day and then put a short magazine in the next?
yes.
No further questions.
All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, officer. You're excused.
All right, thank you.
State, call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state would call Cynthia Hayes.
solemnly swear or affirm that testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yeah.
Good morning, Ms. Hayes.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the record?
Cynthia Hayes, Cynthia, last name Hayes.
Is it a fair statement that you testified today is a bit uncomfortable?
Not really.
Not really? All right. Tell me your relationship to the defendant in this case, Henry Hayes before.
That's my little brother.
All right. I want to talk to you a little bit about your involvement related to the SUV. But before I get to that, let me talk to you a little bit. Do you currently have pending charges with the state of Florida?
Yes, I do.
And related to those, how much time are you facing?
60 years.
60 years?
Mm-hmm.
And until recently, you were incarcerated in the Duval County Jail?
Yes, I was.
And you were released from the Duval County Jail?
Yes, I was.
And you were released on your own recognizance?
Yes.
Meaning you did not have to post a bond?
No.
Now, you have not entered a plea in that case that we're talking about?
No.
While you were in jail, were you pregnant?
Yes.
Did you actually have your child while you were in custody?
Yes, I did.
And how old is your child now?
2 months.
How is your relationship with your child?
It's all right.
It's all right? Your child important to you?
Yes.
Good for a mother to be with her child?
Yes.
All right. But you have agreed as part of being released, and I'm not the prosecutor in that case that we're talking about, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Kite's not the prosecutor in that case.
Yes.
So part of being released was to come to court and tell the truth related to some specific information.
Correct.
All right, I want to talk to you a little bit back about, take you back to February the 7th of 2016. You remember that?
Yes. But what was on that day?
I want to talk to you specifically about those events.
Okay.
And that was a Sunday?
Yes.
You remember it being Super Bowl Sunday?
Yes.
Now, your father, does he own a vehicle?
Yes, he do.
What type of vehicle is that?
A red Tahoe truck.
A red Tahoe truck?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted into evidence as states 253. Is this the red Tahoe truck
Yes.
that we're discussing?
Yes.
All right, now, this was Super Bowl Sunday, and on that day, did you ask your father if you could use his red Tahoe truck?
Yes, I did.
And were you allowed to use the vehicle?
Yes.
And what was the purpose? Why did you want to use the vehicle?
To go to Buffalo Wild Wings to watch the game.
Was there anyone else who was going to be going to Buffalo Wild Wings with you to watch
Yes.
the game? And who was that?
Henry Hayes, Rashawn Jackson, Paris Jackson, and Kwame Richardson.
And Perry Jackson is who?
Paris Jackson is my daughter.
And Rashawn is who?
My child's father.
Approximately what time did you take your father's vehicle on February 7th, 2016?
I don't remember.
Was it sometime late afternoon? Does that sound
It
generally
was
correct?
a little bit before nighttime.
And so, tell me again who was with you?
Rashawn Jackson, Kwame Richardson, Henry Hayes, and Paris Jackson.
Who all was, did a group leave initially from your father's home? Meaning, were you all together that day and left together, or did you pick anyone up?
I can't remember.
You can't remember? So you don't remember if you had to pick up Kwame Richardson from some other location, or if he was with you when you all left?
I don't remember.
Fair enough. So, you took the Tahoe, and where did you go?
We went to Buffalo Wild Wings.
Do you remember approximately what time you got there?
No, I don't. Probably 7, 8.
When you got there, had the Super Bowl already started?
Yes.
All right. And when you got there, did you immediately get a table or did you have to wait for a while?
We had to wait.
You remember what time you left?
No.
Was it dark when you left?
Yes.
And when you left, who all left with you from Buffalo Wild Wings?
Henry Hayes, Kwame Richardson, Rashawn Jackson, and Paris Jackson.
Where was the red Tahoe parked?
In front on the right.
So it was in the parking lot outside of Buffalo Wild Wings?
Yes.
And when you left, where did everyone sit within the vehicle?
Henry Hayes was driving. I was in the passenger seat. Rashawn Jackson was behind me, and Kwame Richardson was on the left. And Paris was between Kwame and Rashawn.
All right. At some point when you left, were you stopped by law enforcement?
Yes.
And tell me what happened.
We was stopped, and no, the police got behind us and cut the lights on. Henry told me to put his gun in the floor.
I'm sorry?
Henry told me to put his gun in the floor. He asked Kwame, did he have a gun? Kwame hesitated and said, nah. And that was it.
So you stopped the vehicle and you said that Henry asked you to put his gun on the floor?
Yes.
Where did that firearm come from?
From off of him.
From off of him?
I believe so.
And when you say he asked you to put that on the floor, what are you talking about by that?
Put it in the floor bed.
So we're looking at what has been admitted as states, I believe 231 and 234. Is this the area that we're talking about?
Yes.
So how did you put it in the floor?
I lift the floor up and put it down, put the gun in there and put the floor back down.
So draw on this if you could. You can touch it with your finger. And so you actually pulled that carpet back and placed Henry's firearm underneath the carpet?
Yes, I did.
Was it visible once you put it under there?
No,
I mean, was there like a bump or anything like that that was shown?
I don't believe so.
You said that this is the red SUV that we're talking about?
Yes.
This is your father's.
Yes.
Were you the one who was supposed to be driving, or was Henry?
I was.
And why is that? Because he trusted the vehicle to you?
Yes.
And this is showing 254, the passenger side of the red, or the driver's side of the red Tahoe?
Yes.
255 showing the driver's front seat. And who was sitting there again?
Henry Hayes.
And so we're seeing what has been entered as states 258. And if you could show me where Rashawn Jackson was sitting. Right in front of that.
Yes.
And your child was where? And Kwame Richardson was where? And you're showing me Kwame Richardson was on the left rear driver's side.
Yes.
Now, in addition to Henry giving you his firearm, were you aware of anyone else having a firearm in the vehicle?
No.
Did the police remove everyone from the vehicle?
Yes.
Did they then conduct a search of the vehicle?
Yes.
Can you tell me what was found?
A firearm.
Now, the firearm, was this the firearm that Henry had handed to you that you put under the floorboard?
No.
Where did this firearm come from?
He said it came out the back trunk.
Did he tell you it was located in a bucket?
I can't remember, but I believe so.
Do you recall him asking you if that was your firearm?
Yes.
And what did you say?
No.
Did he ask everyone in the vehicle if it was their firearm?
I was in the car by myself.
You were in the car by yourself? At some point, while you were outside the vehicle, did you have any conversation with Kwame Richardson?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd ask to excuse the Hayes jury.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of Mr. Hayes' jury, I'll ask you to kindly follow Mr. Record will reflect the Hayes jury has left the courtroom. Mr. Hutton, you may continue.
Ms. Hayes, question I asked is, while you're outside the vehicle, did you have at some point a conversation with Kwame Richardson?
Yes.
Can you tell me what that conversation was?
He shook his head no and told me not to say nothing.
About what?
At that time, I didn't know what he was talking about, but when the officer came to the left with the firearm, that's when I knew what he was talking about.
All right. And do you see Kwame Richardson in the courtroom here today?
Yes.
Could you please identify him?
I can't see what he got on.
Your Honor, may the witness stand?
She may.
I think he got on navy blue.
Navy blue suit,
Mm-hmm.
sitting next to the attorney in the...
Yes.
Your Honor, if the record could reflect that Ms. Hayes has identified Kwame Richardson, the defendant.
The record would so reflect.
Now, I want to jump ahead in time. After this night, your brother, Henry Hayes IV, was arrested related to the homicide of Aiden McClendon.
Yes.
And when that occurred, what did you do related to Kwame Richardson?
I went to Kwame Richardson, and I told him what was going on.
Now, when you say you told him what was going on, what did you tell him?
I told him that Henry Hayes was charged with the gun, the killing of the baby, all those charges. And he threw his phone down, and he was like, I'm just going to turn myself in.
Did he say anything else?
I don't quite remember.
Did you have any further conversation with him?
Yeah,
And what was that?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Mm.
When he threw his gun down, was he visibly upset?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, I said
His
gun.
phone.
Let me correct the record, I meant phone. He was visibly upset?
Yes.
Have you talked to Kwame Richardson about the death of Aiden McClendon on any time moving forward?
No.
Your Honor, I believe we could bring the jury back in.
Let me see y'all at sidebar real quick with the court reporter. Mr. Hayes's jury, please, Madam Bailiff. Mr. Hayes's jury has returned to the courtroom. You all can take your seats.
Your Honor, at this time, we would intend to, it's already been introduced as Exhibit 402, the surveillance video from Buffalo Wild Wings.
You may publish it.
I'm sorry, right, sorry.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Hayes, do you recognize what we're looking at?
Yes.
And what are we seeing here?
The door, the entrance to Buffalo Wild Wings.
And this is Buffalo Wild Wings that you were talking about, that you and Rashawn and Henry Hayes and Kwame Richardson and your child went to?
Yes.
Could you see yourself in this video here?
Yes.
Could you show us? I'm sorry, that's not a very good clip. There's an individual standing in the back with a child. So I'm showing you right there. Who is that?
Henry Hayes.
And are you in this also?
I can't see myself,
I
but
can't see you either. This individual here, who is that?
me.
And do you recognize that this video is reflecting that it was 7:02 p.m.?
Yes.
And that sound accurate to you?
Yes.
So at this point, the individual I'm circling here, is that you coming in?
Yes.
The person holding the child now, who is that?
Danny Haddon.
Danny Haddon?
Yes.
Person following behind him, who is that?
Rashawn Jackson.
And these two individuals here, the one on the right is who?
Here, Hayes.
And the one on the left with the hoodie?
I can't see that.
This individual here?
Kwame Richardson. No, that's not Kwame.
Can you tell me who this individual is?
Not really.
Tell me when you see Kwame Richardson, if you do.
Yeah, he right there.
Backed it up. Tell me when to stop. You see him here?
No.
your child?
Here Hayes, Paris Jackson. Danny Hatton.
In the camo?
Yes.
This individual?
Charles Howell.
This individual with the white stripe on the jacket?
Montego Brown.
You know who this is?
Rashawn Jackson.
This individual and this individual?
Kwame Richardson.
And this individual?
Charles Howell.
And that is you all leaving Buffalo Wild Wings. At that point, did you go out to your car that resulted in the traffic stop with the police that you talked to us about?
Yes.
All right, I want to show you one other video. I want to show you a video that has been entered into evidence as States 411. Before I start, do you recognize where this is?
Yes.
And where is that?
My house.
Your house. Whose room is it?
My daughter's room.
Telling y'all niggas grind for they going.
Whose voice is that?
Here.
Henry
Hayes.
the fourth, your brother?
Yes.
Knock something down if they gon' shoot, then shoot something. Better hear about the shit on the news, something. Better hear about the shit on the news, something. Man down over yonder, young came through, holding on the K like a drum. Nigga no one. Niggas getting grabbed by nigga one. Hoes getting S-style in your guns. Police will talk, but we won't say nothing.
Did your brother stay in that room sometimes?
Yes.
Did you know he had those firearms in there?
No.
Your Honor, I don't have any further questions.
All right, cross.
Good morning, Ms. Hayes.
Good morning.
In 2016, you were how old?
19.
And your brother was 16, is that correct?
Yes.
And like all typical 16-year-olders, he always wants to drive, is that correct?
Yes.
And you let him drive that night, is that right?
Yes.
I mean, he jumped at the chance to drive anytime, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, ma'am, you said you're pending a couple of charges that carry up to 60 years, is that right?
Yes.
And you were incarcerated because of those charges, is that right?
Yes.
When were you incarcerated?
From November 10th up until June 11th.
Okay, November 10th of 2017?
17.
To when?
June 11th, I
June
believe.
11th?
Yes.
Okay. That night, on February the 7th, 2016, you told Officer Poole you didn't know anything about the firearm that was found, is that correct?
Yes.
Of course, you didn't volunteer that you put anything underneath the carpet, is that right?
No.
Certainly, you didn't put a rifle underneath the carpet, is that right?
No.
Now, on March 1st, 2016, do you remember giving a sworn statement to the state attorneys?
Yes.
And in that sworn statement, you stated that you didn't know anything about a firearm being in that truck on February the 7th, 2016, didn't you?
Yes.
But your testimony is different today than what it was in that sworn statement on March the 1st, 2016, is that correct?
Yes.
You gave another sworn statement to the state attorneys on June the 11th, 2018, is that correct?
Yes.
And after you gave that sworn statement, you were released from jail, is that right?
Yes.
Are you hoping that the testimony that you're giving today in this trial will help you out in your pending charges?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, Ms. Wright.
I'd ask that the case jury be excused.
Sure. Folks on the Hayes jury, if we'll kindly follow Ms. Golding out. The record will reflect the Hayes jury has left the courtroom. Ms. Wright?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Hayes, Henry Hayes is your little brother, right?
Yes.
And well, you would agree that you have an especially close relationship with him, is that correct?
Somewhat, yes.
Okay, well, he was living with you sometimes, is that also true?
I can't hear you.
He lived with you sometimes, is that true?
Yes.
And you gave him money, is that also true?
Yes.
And you kind of looked out for him, is that also true?
Yes.
Now, in this case, you went to Mr. Richardson and you asked him to take responsibility for that gun, is that correct?
No.
So you didn't go to him and tell Mr. Richardson that if he took responsibility, he wouldn't be charged with the murder?
No.
Now, in this case, you have, like you said, you've been accused of 2 charges, is that correct?
Yes.
And one of them is a RICO, is that also true?
Yes.
And the other one is a conspiracy.
Yes, sir.
We had previously addressed this issue in court.
We did. The name of the charge, that's it, though.
Yes, Your Honor.
That was my understanding of what I said. So
That-
proceed, Ms. Wright.
Thank you, Your Honor. You're also accused of conspiring to commit a RICO act. Is that also correct?
Yes.
And for each of those, you're looking at 30 years. Is that also true?
Yes.
And for the past 8 months, up until June 11th, you were incarcerated on those charges. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you had your baby in jail. Is that also true?
Yes.
And you would agree that you would do anything not to go back to jail. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you said that the charges that you have were not being handled by those prosecutors. Is that correct?
Yes.
But you've been talking to those prosecutors. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it was after you spoke with those prosecutors that you were released from jail. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you didn't have to pay anything to get out. Is that also true?
No, ma'am.
What was your bond prior to that?
$400,000.
$400,000. Now, within that vehicle, you would agree that everyone was closer to you than Kwame Richardson.
Kwame Richardson was close with me too.
Okay, but you had your brother, is that correct?
Correct.
You would agree your brother's closer to you than Kwame Richardson.
Yes.
And the other person was your boyfriend, is that correct?
Yes.
Father of your 3 kids, is that also true?
Yes.
And you would agree you're closer to him than Kwame Richardson.
Yes.
And then there was your baby, who obviously you're closer than Kwame Richardson.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So Mr. Richardson was the person who was least close to you as far as relationships. Is that also true?
Not really.
Okay. And you would agree that you love yourself more than you love Kwame Richardson. Is that also true?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that while you guys were in the vehicle, Mr. Richardson indicated that he did not have a firearm. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay. Now, you guys are stopped by the police, is that correct?
Yes.
And the police officer makes each of you get out one by one, is that correct?
Correct.
You were the last person out of the vehicle?
No, I believe I was the first or the second.
Who was the last person out?
I can't remember.
Okay, so when you're taking out of the vehicle, where does the police officer take you to?
He put me in the car behind the truck on the
Okay.
right passenger side.
So you're inside the police car. Am I to assume the police car is closed
Yes.
and the window is up?
No, it was cracked. It was down halfway.
I'm sorry?
The window was down halfway.
And you indicate that Mr. Richardson was outside on the walk. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, he didn't make any statements to you about the gun. Is that correct?
Yes, basically yes. He didn't say in Pacific it was a gun, but he said, no, don't say nothing.
And that was a statement he made to you. Is that correct?
Yes.
But when they questioned you in that sworn statement, you never mentioned that statement. Would that be true?
Yes.
And then you indicated that you spoke to him at some point later. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you said that your brother was accused of the murder. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that Mr. Richardson knew that?
No.
Okay. So he didn't know that your brother was accused of the murder?
No.
And that's when you had a conversation and he said, I'm going to turn myself in. Is that
Yes.
correct? And do you know what he was talking about?
I didn't ask in detail what he was talking about.
Okay, so you didn't ask him, hey, did you commit this murder that my brother is accused of?
No, I did not. I went to him and said my brother was charged with a firearm, murder, attempted murder, and all the charges that he was charged with. And he threw his phone down. He said, I'm going to turn myself in.
Now, Ms. Hayes, you are aware of the evidence against your brother in this case, is that correct?
Correct.
And your dad's been keeping you up with everything that's been going on, is that also true?
Not really.
Ms. Hayes, have you ever been convicted of a crime of dishonesty?
No.
You've never been convicted of a theft charge?
Oh, yes.
How many times?
Um,
I don't have any further questions.
All right, Mr. Hutton, do you have any redirect as to Ms. Wright's questions?
Yes, sir.
All right, please.
You asked the question, you agreed you would do anything not to go back to jail, and you said yes.
correct.
But that did not include coming in here and saying something that's not true.
No.
You're telling us the truth today.
Yes.
You were asked a question related to You were asked a question related to your bond, that it was $400,000 and that it was reduced so you could be released on your own recognizance.
Yes.
Did you have any money at all to post any type of bond?
No.
None at all.
No.
You were also questioned about whether or not Kwame Richardson was close to you. Was he close to you?
Yes, I consider him a brother because of how close he was to hearing. Yes.
See, consider him as a brother. Does it make it difficult to talk about what he told you today?
It does, but it's not like I have it's like a bad vibe or a bad blood between him, but it's hard.
With regard to, I want to talk a little bit about the firearms. The first firearm, well, let me back up on that. You said it was hard. Is that why when you originally were asked about this, you didn't make, when you gave a statement, that you didn't make any reference to the fact of what Kwame Richardson had said to you about don't say anything?
Yes.
Because he's like a brother to you.
Yes.
You're trying to protect him?
Yes.
But you're telling us what happened now.
Yes.
You said that Henry passed you the firearm, that you put it under the carpet. Did Henry pass you any other firearms?
No.
Did he pass any firearms to the back seat?
No.
What about Rayshawn Jackson? How do you know he didn't have a gun?
He didn't have a firearm at all.
Didn't have a firearm at all?
Yes.
And so that leaves Kwame Richardson.
Yes.
You know, I have one other question, but it would be relevant to both juries.
All right, then let's bring in Mr. Hayes' jury, please. The jury is back for Mr. Hayes' case. Mr. Hutton, you may have a redirect.
Yes, sir. Ms. Hayes, you were asked by Mr. Hernandez whether or not Henry passed you a long gun.
Yes.
Are you aware of a Mac 90 that was recovered, a long gun, from 1846 Helena Street?
No,
Do you know where 1846 Helena Street is?
not really.
Are you familiar with the terminology area called the bottom?
Yes.
All right, if I can approach the witness.
You may.
Ms. Hayes, I'm showing you what has been marked as dates 298. You recognize this firearm?
No.
Haven't seen it.
No.
And I do not have any further questions.
All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes, you may, Your Honor.
Ms. Hayes, you're excused. Thank you. All right, State, call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state would call Henry Hayes III.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, I'm Henry Lee Hayes III.
Mr. Hayes, are you the father to Henry Hayes IV, the defendant in this case?
Yes, sir.
Is it a fair statement that you really don't want to be here today testifying?
No.
But we issued you a subpoena to come in and tell the truth?
Yes.
And that's what you're going to do today?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes, what type of vehicle do you own?
I had a 95 Chevy Tahoe.
And did you own that vehicle back on February the 7th of 2016?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes, I'm showing you what is states 253. Do you recognize this vehicle?
Yes, that's my truck.
That's your truck? The 1995 red Tahoe?
Yes.
Do you recall that, taking you back to February the 7th of 2016, that was a Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday?
Yes.
On that day, did your daughter Cynthia Hayes ask to use and drive your red Tahoe?
Yes.
Did you allow her to use your vehicle?
Yes, I did.
And what was your understanding as far as who was going to be driving?
My daughter.
Did you know where your daughter was going to be going that evening?
Buffalo Wild Wings for a Super Bowl party.
Was there anyone else who was going with your daughter to Buffalo Wild Wings?
My son and my granddaughter and Rayshawn Jackson.
And when we say your son, of course...
Henry Hayes.
Yes, sir. And Rayshawn is the father of Cynthia Hayes' child?
Yes.
Do you also know a person by the name of Kwame Richardson, or JB?
I didn't know him at the time, no.
You didn't know him at the time? Was he with them when he left?
I didn't see him when my daughter dropped me off home, and she went to her house and got ready, and then she left. But I didn't see him when they, I didn't see him when they left.
All right. Did you know that Kwame Richardson was a close friend of your son's?
Yes, after that night I knew.
So you knew they hung out together?
Somewhat. I mean, they said they was friends, so.
So once they left in the red Tahoe, kind of earlier in that day, I want to talk about who was in possession of that vehicle. Was it you?
Yes.
Anybody else besides you?
No one, me, just me.
Hadn't allowed any other person to drive your red Tahoe earlier that day?
No.
So you had possession of it right up until your daughter and your son and Rayshawn Jackson and your granddaughter left?
Yes.
But you allowed them to use the vehicle?
Yes.
When they left, who was driving?
When my daughter dropped me off home, and she left driving.
So you drove over to, they left from her house and she dropped you off at home?
No, she dropped me off home and left from my house and went to her house.
I see. Later that evening, did you receive a call from your sister that the red Tahoe had been stopped by the police?
Yes.
Did you actually respond out to where the police had stopped the Tahoe?
Yes.
Do you know who was driving the vehicle when it was stopped?
My son, Henry Hayes.
Did you learn that a firearm was found inside of your vehicle?
That's what the officer said, but he didn't show me a firearm. He just said one was in there.
Did he tell you that he found it in the bucket in the very back of the Tahoe?
No, he just said he found a firearm in the back of my truck.
All right. I'll show you 254. This is also your vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes.
States 255, we're seeing the driver's side of the front passenger seat. Is that accurate?
Yes.
States 256, we're seeing the passenger side of the vehicle. States 257, the cracked tail light. I want to ask you about the bucket. Did you have a bucket?
Yes, I had a black bucket back there.
Where did that bucket come from?
It came from a little convenience store. I ran out of gas, and I was trying to find a bucket. I'm gonna say a regular gas can, but they didn't have one, so I got a black bucket.
All right. So you can actually touch this screen and draw on it. Could you show us where the bucket was located?
It was located in here.
I don't see it. Try it again. Touch the screen. Put a little. That's where you remember the bucket being?
Yes.
Had you ever had a firearm in your vehicle before?
No.
Should there have been a firearm in that vehicle?
No.
Do you have any idea where that firearm came from?
No.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Mr. Hayes, I'm showing you what is State's Exhibit 299 that's been entered into evidence. Do you recognize this firearm?
No.
Ever seen it before?
The first time seeing it.
Was this firearm, to your knowledge, in the back of your vehicle?
Well, that's what the officer said. If that's the gun, he's saying that was back there.
How about prior to you releasing the car to your daughter?
No.
Did you ask your son where that firearm came from?
Yes, I did. He said he didn't know. He said it shouldn't be no gun back there.
You know, at this point, I think it would be appropriate to excuse the Richardson jury.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, on Mr. Richardson's jury, if you would kindly follow Ms. Crawford back to the jury room.
Your Honor, I misspoke. I meant the Hayes jury.
Y'all could come back in, Mr. Richardson's jury.
I apologize, Your Honor. I apologize.
That's all right. Mr. Hayes, jury, if you would please follow Ms. Golding out. The record will reflect that Hayes' jury has left the courtroom. Mr. Hutton, you may continue.
Mr. Hayes, I want to talk about the day that your son was arrested for the homicide related to the death of Aiden McClendon. You knew that he had been arrested on that day?
Yes, sir. He called me down there. Well, he was at the detention center.
And so you actually went down and spoke to the detectives?
Yes.
And they explained to you what was going on?
Yes.
And you actually spoke with the detective, Scott?
It was two of them.
Two of them. Huh. After you left, after meeting with the police, did you go to find Kwame Richardson?
No, I went to my daughter and told my daughter what was going on.
So did you go with your daughter?
Yes.
Why did you want to go find him?
I mean, she said she had to go talk to him, so I rode with her.
And then when you met, did you find Kwame Richardson?
Yes, she found him.
And did you tell him that your son, Henry Hayes IV, had been arrested for the murder of Aiden McClendon?
Yes. Well, my daughter talked to him. She told him that they're trying to put a murder on Henry.
And what did Kwame Richardson do in response?
Nothing. I mean, she was telling him about the gun that they found in the truck, and he just threw his phone down. And then he was like, they went to talk, and he was like, well, I got to let him know that was my gun. And then they walked off and went to talking.
He told you that he had to let who know?
I guess go down there and let the people know that was his gun in the truck.
Did he say anything about needing to turn himself in?
I didn't too much hear more because I went to calling Henry's mother and letting her know what was going on.
Can you identify the person who said that the gun was theirs in the courtroom here today?
He's sitting right there.
Could you describe the article of clothing that he's wearing?
I can't see him.
Your Honor, may the witness stand?
You may stand, Mr. Hayes, if that'll help you.
He got to stand. I can't see him. I can't see what he has on.
Can you see who he's sitting next to?
He had on a blue jacket, I believe.
Blue jacket. If the record could reflect that Mr. Hayes III has identified the defendant, Kwame Richardson.
The record will so reflect.
Your Honor, I do not have any further questions for this witness.
Ms. Wright?
Mr. Hayes, you would agree you love your son, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you've been with your son at each and every step of the way. Is that also true?
Yes, ma'am.
You were there when they first arrested him and questioned him. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you've been at every single court appearance?
Yes, ma'am.
Every hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Everything that's going on in your son's case. Is that
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Now, the first time that we have become aware that you said that Mr. Richardson told you that that gun was his was last week on Thursday. Is that correct?
Last week?
On Thursday, yes, sir.
No.
When did you tell the police about that?
Well, we didn't tell the police about it.
Okay, so
that was him and my daughter was having conversations, so I don't know what they was,
Okay, that's what I'm saying. When did the state attorney's office know about this statement?
Yeah, you're right. It was last week when they subpoenaed me to come up there.
I don't have any further questions.
Mr. Hutton, any redirect as to those questions?
Mr. Hayes, is it accurate that when you met with Ms. Kite and myself about approximately a week, 2 weeks ago,
Yes.
and we were
Week
just
ago.
generally asking you questions related to the red Tahoe?
Yes.
And we didn't specifically ask you anything about Kwame Richardson, did we?
And no.
You were the one who told us.
Yes.
So we didn't know about it till you told us.
Yeah, I should have known about it.
And it's the truth.
Yes.
I don't have any further questions.
All right, maybe we'll bring in Mr. Hayes' jury. All right, please bring in Mr. Hayes' jury. All right, Mr. Hutton, Mr. Hernandez, any?
Your Honor, I have no cross.
All right, Mr. Hutton, any redirect? Or, no, of course not, there's no cross. May this witness be excused?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Hayes, you're excused, sir.
Your Honor, may Mr. Hayes be allowed to sit in as and view this trial since he's already testified?
He has been excused.
By the state, yeah.
Ms. Wright, he is excused. He may remain. State, call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Detective Jennifer and Colin. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you please introduce yourself to the juries and spell your last name for the record?
I'm Detective Amponin. My last name is spelled Amponin.
Where are you currently employed?
With the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
And what's your position there?
I'm a crime scene detective
How long have you been a crime scene detective?
for 6.5 years.
And tell us generally what your duties are as a crime scene detective.
My duties as a crime scene detective are to photograph, document, collect, preserve, and also process evidence.
I want to bring your attention to the case we're here for today, the state of Florida versus Henry Hayes and Kwame Richardson. Were you asked to process a specific item of evidence in this case?
Yes, I was.
What was that item?
It was a Glock 26 handgun.
Can you tell the jury how you process this Glock 26?
I processed the Glock 26 for touch DNA evidence.
What is touch DNA?
Touch DNA is DNA evidence that we cannot see. It's not visible to the naked eye. It doesn't have any staining like blood does. And it comes from when a person touches an item with their skin.
And can you explain the process by which you check this weapon for touch DNA?
In order to process the gun for touch DNA, I would put on gloves, fresh gloves. I open a sterile envelope which contains a swab, which is basically a Q-tip. I place 2 drops of distilled water onto the Q-tip. I rub it over the area where I try to obtain touch DNA from. It's placed back into the sterile envelope, into a larger manila envelope, which is labeled. It is sealed. I sign it, initial it, and put it into the property room.
How many swabs do you use on an item that you're processing for DNA?
For touch DNA 1.
Why is that?
Because touch DNA may be such a small amount on an item, we want to concentrate as much as we can onto the one swab to obtain the best analysis possible. And in this case, I processed the areas of the firearm where the user would have had touched it or handled the firearm. These are the areas that I processed.
So what areas are those that you just mentioned?
It would be the textured areas of the firearm.
And why are the textured areas more likely to have touch DNA?
They would retain the skin cells better. They're rigid, they have grooves. So in this case, they would retain or the skin cells better.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness.
You may.
Actually, can the witness step down?
She may.
Do you recognize this? What is this?
This is the firearm check.
I'm actually going to have you remove. I'm sorry, for the record, I'm showing the witness State's Exhibit 299. Now we're going to do this in two sections so the jury can see you can stand up. But can you first show the second part of the jury where you process the DNA?
So on this firearm, I would process the front sight, the rear sight. I also would have processed the slide lock. On this side, I would have processed the slide lock lever. I also would have processed the trigger guard, the trigger, and also the handle of the firearm. Each of the areas, I don't know if you can see it, but they have ridges and grooves and areas where the touch DNA is where I would obtain it from.
So once again, show the jury the areas that you would process.
So I would process the slide lock lever, the slide lock, the trigger guard, the magazine release, and then the handle or the grip of the firearm because it has the ridges and grooves where I would be able to do the touch DNA.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Cross.
I have no cross, Your Honor.
That's right. All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Detective. You're excused. State, call your next witness. You may. Do we need the court reporter?
No, Your Honor, for schedule.
All right, for schedule. Y'all can take your seats. Welcome back. State, call your next witness.
Your Honor, if we could call Detective David Scott.
Morning.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Detective David Scott
Detective Scott, where are you currently employed?
with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
16 years.
Where are you currently employed?
I'm currently with the polygraph unit.
And what do you do with the polygraph unit?
It's typical lie detector type stuff. We do both polygraphs on new hires as well as criminal polygraphs.
If you could we walk the jury through your work history since you've been with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir, we could. I was assigned for 6 years. My first 6 years was in patrol. And then for 4 years, I was an auto theft detective. And then for 6 years, I was assigned to homicide. And then in November of 2017, I became a polygrapher.
Could you also tell us a little bit some of the training that you have had since you've been employed with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir, I can. In 2008, I took investigative interviews. In 2009, basic patrol rifle school. In 2012, detective and investigative fundamentals. In 2012, case preparation and court presentation. And then in 2017, psychophysiological detection of deception.
So I want to focus back on your time when you were a homicide detective, and more specifically, where were you assigned back on January the 29th, 2016?
I was assigned to the homicide unit.
And while you were assigned to the homicide unit, were you assigned as the lead detective in the murder of Aiden McClendon?
Yes, sir, I was.
And so have you worked on that case from January 29th, 2016, really through present?
Yes, sir, I did.
If you could briefly explain, how do you specifically get assigned a case when you're a detective in the homicide division?
A homicide team is based of 4 homicide detectives and a homicide sergeant, and we are on call. At the time, it was on a 24-hour rotating basis per team. We were on call that day, and then between the 4 detectives, being assigned the lead detective is also amongst the 4 detectives assigned on a rotating basis.
And so when you lead, do you also have a team of people around you, meaning other people who work within the sheriff's office?
Oh, absolutely.
So does that include like even the patrol, as far as they play a role in the homicide investigation?
Absolutely.
What's their important for them?
Obviously, they're the first to respond to the scene, so they get there, assess the situation, the safety, and then they provide the integrity of the scene, potentially identify any witnesses, secure any witnesses, but essentially their role there is to protect the integrity of the scene.
And so also part of this team, does that include evidence technicians?
Yes, sir, it does.
And what role do they play in the homicide investigation?
They collect and process and photograph any evidence at the scene.
Does it also include the Florida Department of Law Enforcement as part of this team?
Yes, sir, it does.
And what do they do?
They process evidence, for example, DNA. The majority of what I have used them for is DNA analysis and firearms analysis.
And did you also, in this specific case, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, have the involvement of a lab called DNA Labs International?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, I know that this was a long investigation, but I sort of want to focus and ask you about some specific areas that you were involved with during the investigation. So when you were first notified of Aiden McClendon's death, where did you respond?
I responded to 710 Spearing Street.
And then later that evening, did you meet with Tamisha Brown?
Yes, later that evening. Actually, it was very, very early the next morning.
Was it around 2:02 in the morning?
Yes, sir, it was right around that time.
Did you have a brief conversation with her?
Yes, sir, I did.
And when I say brief, was it relatively brief?
It was brief, yes.
And why was that?
She was arriving as I was leaving her apartment in a vehicle. She was obviously very emotional, very distraught. I can only imagine it was one of the most, if not the most traumatic day of her life. So
Sustain.
All right. Due to what had just happened, is it a fair statement that is why it was a brief conversation?
Yes, it was a brief conversation.
Was she able to, when you had that initial brief conversation, specifically identify anyone who was involved as far as shooters in the white Toyota Corolla?
The only description she gave me was the person in the front passenger seat shooting had a mask covering his face, and the person in the right rear passenger seat was a fair-skinned black male.
And did she tell you that she'd gotten a clear look at the lighter-skinned black male?
She just described him as a fair-skinned black male.
But that she'd gotten a clear look at him?
Objection leading.
Sustain.
Did she describe the face as far as the coloration of the person who was in the front seat with the mask?
No, she didn't. She just said he had a mask on.
Did she say the color of his skin?
No.
Did she tell you he was African American?
She said he had a mask on.
Okay. Did she know either of their identities based on what she'd seen?
She did not indicate that to me at that time, no.
Did you also speak with Tamisha Brown's mother, Rhonda McDowell?
Rhonda McDowell was in the vehicle with Tamisha Brown when I spoke to them both briefly that initial time.
And you also conducted that evening an interview of Jordan Harris?
Yes, sir, I did.
And conducted an interview of Thomas Brown?
Yes, sir, I did.
And Thomas Brown is the brother of Tamisha Brown?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
What about an individual by the name of Reginald Ducey Williams? Did you talk to him at any point that day?
No, sir, not that day. I did not.
Did you talk to him the next day?
No, sir, I don't believe it was the next day.
Were you attempting to get in touch with him?
Yes, sir, we were looking for him to try to speak with him.
On January the 30th, at 5:11 p.m., did you receive a phone call from Rhonda McDowell? And I don't want to go into the contents, but I'm just asking if you did.
Yes.
Your Honor, I believe at this time it would be appropriate to excuse the Kwame Brown jury, or the Kwame Richardson jury.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of Mr. Richardson's jury, I'll have you file on this property back to your jury room, please. The record will reflect that Mr. Richardson's jury has left the courtroom. Mr. Hutton, you may continue.
Now, this call that you received from Rhonda McDowell, did it relate to a Facebook photograph that Thomas Brown had received from Jamari Brooks?
Yes, sir, it did.
During the conversation that you were having with Rhonda McDowell, could you hear Tanisha Brown in the background?
Yes, sir, I could.
Was she screaming?
Yes, sir, she was.
Distraught?
Absolutely.
What could you hear Tanisha Brown screaming?
That's the person that shot my baby. That's the person that shot my baby.
Did you ask for that Facebook photograph to be sent to you?
I did.
Did you also ask to meet with Tanisha Brown at the Police Memorial Building?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did she come down?
Yes, I asked Ms. McDowell to bring Tamisha Brown down to, so I could speak with her further.
Your Honor, if I could approach the witness?
You may.
I'm going to show you what has been entered into evidence at State Exhibit 413.
Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is that?
That is the photograph that was emailed to me by, I believe it was Ms. McDowell's daughter, LaHonda Fleming, of the photograph that was sent to Thomas Brown.
So, when you met with Tamisha Brown, did you ask her about that Facebook photograph?
We spoke about it, yes, sir.
What did she tell you as regarding one of the individuals in the photograph?
She identified the person on the right in the photograph as the person in the right rear passenger seat shooting.
And at that time, did she say that was the light-skinned black male in the rear passenger seat of the white Toyota Corolla?
At that time, did she?
Yeah, did you discuss that with her, that was who, where, the person she identified, where did she say he was located in the Corolla?
The right rear passenger seat.
Do you see the person that she identified in the photo in the courtroom here today?
I do.
Could you please point out where he's sitting and identify him if you can?
Your Honor, you mind if I stand up?
You may, sir.
It's the gentleman in the light blue shirt with the black and blue striped tie.
Your Honor, if the record could reflect that Detective Scott has identified Henry Hayes before.
The record would so reflect.
Now, did you use a photo spread in this case?
No, sir, I didn't.
And if you could tell the jury what a photo spread is.
A photo spread is a set of photographs. It typically contains a suspect or a person of interest and what we call 5 filler photographs.
And the purpose of the photo spread is?
To identify a suspect.
And so you've got various photos and the person selects one, if they can.
Correct.
In this case, you didn't use a photo spread.
No, sir, I did not.
And why is that?
Well, because Miss Brown had identified known to be Mr. Hayes from a single photograph outside of my presence and on her own. So I saw no need to put a photo spread together of somebody that she had already identified from a single photograph. There was no need to put this same person in a photo spread with 5 other random individuals.
So let me ask you this. Obviously you met with her related to this Facebook photo. Did you have the opportunity to observe her when she was identifying Henry Hayes?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you observe any hesitancy?
No hesitancy whatsoever.
You've interviewed hundreds of people in your role as a detective?
Hundreds, if not thousands, yes, sir.
And you're currently assigned as a polygrapher?
That's correct.
And you have received specialized training in determining whether people show signs of deception?
Sustained.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you see any signs of deception that you recognize?
Hold on. Restate your question, Mr. Hutton. I'm not sure I quite followed.
Ask if she recognized any signs of deception in Tamisha Brown when she identified Henry Hayes.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Did you also discuss with Tamisha Brown the location as far as where her vehicle had been at the time of the shooting?
Yes, sir, I did.
I'm going to show you what has been admitted into evidence as States 15. You
Yes, sir.
recognize this photograph?
Yes, sir.
Now, were you able to pinpoint an exact location as far as where her vehicle had been?
No, sir, not an exact location. She told me she was parked in the front yard where you see that drive there, with the front of the vehicle facing towards the front of the house and the rear of the vehicle taken from Albert Street, which is about where the photographer taking this picture would be standing.
And if you could mark on the photograph with your finger where it was she said she was.
I would say this general area here.
Try it again.
Did it not?
It didn't show up. All right.
Is that better?
You know, at this point, it would be appropriate to bring the Richardson jury back in.
All right, Ms. Crawford, please bring in the Richardson jury.
The jury is entering the courtroom.
You all can take your seats. Thank you.
Detective Scott, I apologize for having you ask this question again, but I want to make sure that we share it with everyone involved in this case. During your discussion with Tamisha Brown, did you ask her about the location of her vehicle at the time that the shooting occurred?
Yes, sir, I did.
And was she able to pinpoint an exact location?
It wasn't an exact location. What she described as being in the driveway with her, this dirt driveway with the front of her car facing the front of the house and the rear of the vehicle facing Albert Street, which, viewing from this photo, I believe would be about where the picture would be taken.
All right.
But
if you could mark with your finger on this photograph where it was that Tamisha Brown approximated her position to be. Thank you. And could you tell me why you weren't able to pinpoint precisely, meaning this exact spot where her vehicle was?
Because after the shooting, Ms. Brown took her child, obviously directly to Shands Hospital for immediate medical care.
I touched on this before, but I want to go back to Reginald Ducey Williams. Were you finally able to meet with Mr. Williams on January 31st, 2016 at 1:14 p.m.?
Yes, sir, I was.
And again, this event, the murder of Aiden McClendon, happened at 6:05 p.m. on Friday.
That's correct.
When you met with Reginald Ducey Williams, was he cooperative with you?
No, sir, I would not say he was cooperative.
Did you do anything to try to assist the process to get him to speak with you?
I did. I called Ms. McDowell and asked her and Tamisha Brown to come down due to him. I did not feel he was giving me the story of the truth of what happened. I was hoping that they could speak to him, being family, to assist me with getting him to talk to me and tell me the truth about what happened.
Did Tamisha Brown and Rhonda McDowell agree to come down to assist you?
Yes, sir, they did.
Did they meet with Reginald Ducey Williams related to that?
Yes, sir.
Were their efforts successful?
No, sir, they weren't.
Has that ever changed? Has Reginald Ducey Williams ever cooperated with law enforcement related to this case?
No, sir.
Did you also meet with a person by the name of Jamari Brooks?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you interview him?
Yes, sir, I did.
And was he able to identify anyone that he had seen at the Gate gas station the same night between 8 and 9 p.m. that's located at 45th Street in Moncrief?
Yes, sir, he did.
Were you advised that they were standing outside a white Toyota Corolla with dark tint?
Yes, sir.
Overruled.
Who was he able to identify?
He identified JB and Cracker Jack as standing outside the white Toyota Corolla with the dark tint at the Gate gas station.
Beyond providing you with that information, was he otherwise cooperative?
Yes, sir, he certainly was that day.
Now, based on that information, did you go to the Gate gas station at 45th and Moncrief and see if they had video footage?
Yes, we did.
Did you collect that footage?
Yes, sir, we did.
And did you review that footage?
Yes, sir, we have.
What were you able to see in that footage?
We weren't able to locate anything of evidentiary value. The way the cameras were positioned, you could see white vehicles and people moving around, but nothing where I could specifically identify this suspect vehicle or the suspects. The cameras weren't close enough.
And so the angle of the camera, was it pointing towards the front of the store? Your Honor, he's reviewed the footage. They have the footage.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, sir, will you repeat the
Can
question?
you tell me about the camera angle?
There were multiple camera angles, but none of them were of evidentiary value to me after reviewing the video.
Your Honor, at this time, I would ask again to excuse the Richardson jury.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the Richardson jury, once again, please follow Ms. Crawford out. Y'all can take your seats, and the record will reflect the Richardson jury has left the courtroom.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, sir. You may.
On March the 10th, 2016, did you have the opportunity to meet with and interview Henry Hayes related to the murder of Aiden McClendon?
Yes, sir, I did.
Was that interview recorded, both audio and video?
Yes, sir, it was.
Now, I'm not going to show you the audio and video, but I want to ask you about some very specific parts of that interview.
Okay.
Did you read and explain to him his constitutional rights?
Yes, sir, I did.
Was this done in a written format?
Yes, sir, it was.
Did you have him read it aloud to make sure that he understood his rights?
I had him read the first line out loud, and then I read the rest to him.
And did you have him initial next to each one of his rights?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you have him sign indicating that he understood his rights?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did he agree to speak with you?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm going to show you what has been filed for identification in Henry Hayes' case as Exhibit 22D. Do you recognize this?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is that?
That is his constitutional rights form that we reviewed during his interview on March the 10th.
In the constitutional rights form that he signed?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, I've introduced as the state's next member of piece of evidence.
Objection?
No objection.
Be so admitted.
I was advised by the court that it's already been entered. I did not realize that. Does it have 5? It's been entered as 533.
Be so admitted as State's Exhibit 533.
Something has already been entered, like as ID 22D. So it would need to be another ID.
Oh, she's saying that the identification number is duplicative, correct?
Yes.
All right, so it's not been admitted, that document hasn't been admitted, but something else with that identification number has been?
Right.
Okay.
So what identification do you like us to use? I will work with the clerk on that after.
All right, so what's this State's Exhibit then, Madam?
Hayes, Judge?
For Hayes.
It would be 535.
State's Exhibit 535.
You remember talking to him, Mr. Hayes, after he signed and agreed to speak with you, after he signed his constitutional rights, related to whether he was a member of a gang?
Yes, sir, that came up.
And what did he tell you?
He essentially said he tried to distance himself from those types of people and stated that he liked to hang out with the ladies.
Did you specifically ask him about whether he was a member of Problem Child Entertainment?
I did.
And what did he tell you?
I didn't get a response.
Did you ask him what his telephone number was?
I did.
And what telephone number did he provide to you?
904-405-5248.
Did you question Mr. Hayes as to whether he had ever owned or possessed a firearm?
Yes, sir, I did. On multiple occasions, he said he doesn't play with guns.
Did you ask him about a white Toyota Corolla?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did he tell you if he had any information or he knew anything about a white Toyota Corolla?
He said he did not.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm showing you what has been marked as State's Identification Exhibit number 22B.
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize this?
Yes, sir.
And what is this?
It's the white Toyota Corolla.
Your Honor, may I publish this to the jury?
You may.
First, I guess I need to move into evidence. This would be State's 536.
Any objection? It's already,
No objection.
I think that photographs.
It's already been entered as a, so.
Bless you.
Now, the photograph of that white Toyota Corolla that I just showed to the jury, what is that a photograph of?
That is of the suspect vehicle.
The vehicle that was taken from Shatoya Williams?
Correct.
All right. The reason I ask you about that, did you specifically show Mr. Hayes that vehicle, that photograph?
Yes, I believe I did.
Did that jog his memory?
No, sir.
Did he ever at any point say that he knew anything about the white Toyota Corolla in that photograph?
No, sir, he did not.
Your Honor, at this time, I believe the Richardson jury could come back in.
All right, Ms. Crawford, please bring them in.
The jury is entering the courtroom.
All right, folks, y'all can take your seats.
Now, Detective Scott, I want to ask you if you are familiar with a person by the name of Sanquan Bradford.
Yes, sir, I am.
And Sanquan Bradford is the individual who was arrested for the carjacking of Shatoya Williams?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And because you believe that that white Toyota Corolla was related to the homicide investigation, did you take part in the interview of Mr. Bradford when he was arrested?
Yes, sir, I did.
And during the initial interview after he was arrested, did he deny involvement?
Grounds? I didn't hear you. Sustained.
I want to ask you, you obviously got a chance to see him at the time that you interviewed him.
Yes, sir.
And did he have short hair at the time that you met with him?
I don't recall exactly what his hair looked like, sir.
Do you remember if he had a crown haircut? Meaning that he had hair that stuck up, that came out from multiple angles?
We're talking about Mr. Bradford?
Mr. Bradford.
I can't be absolutely sure on that, sir, no, sir.
Let me ask you about on August the 25th, 2016. Did you receive an inmate request from Sanquan Bradford?
Yes, sir, I did.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I want to show you what has been filed for identification in State's Exhibit 21Q.
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize that?
I do.
And what is that?
It is an inmate request form, Sanquan Bradford requesting that he would like to speak with me.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to move this into evidence to the State's next exhibit.
Objections?
No objection.
Will be so admitted.
Judge, it would be 537 for Hayes and 532 for Richardson.
537 for Hayes and 532 for Richardson. It will be admitted with those numbers.
Your Honor, may the witness read the information contained on this form?
It's in evidence. You may do so.
It says, Detective Scott, I would like to speak with you as soon as possible. Ronald Thomas told me I can trust you. I got information. I want justice for the family. It's signed Sanquan Bradford.
And when is it dated again?
August the 25th of 2016.
So as a result of receiving that request, did you meet with Sanquan Bradford?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you interviewed him?
Yes, sir.
He discussed with you his involvement in the carjacking?
Yes.
And are you aware that he agreed to cooperate with law enforcement?
Yes, I am.
And you're also aware he pled guilty to robbery?
Yes, sir, I am.
And you're aware that Sanquan Bradford has cooperated with law enforcement since August 26, 2016?
Yes, sir, I am.
Now, part of your investigation as the lead detective is submitting evidence that's been collected for further scientific testing?
That's correct.
Did you collect a MAC 97.62 by 39 assault rifle and any live rounds recovered from 1846 Felony Street?
Yes, we did submit that to FDLE for analysis.
What about a Glock 26 recovered during a traffic stop on February 7, 2016?
Yes, sir, we did.
What about any casings and any live rounds found from the scene at 710 Spearing Street or in that general area around 710 Spearing Street?
Yes, sir, we did.
I'll ask you this question, maybe everybody understands, but what is a casing?
A casing is, obviously you have the bullet at the tip and then typically like a brass or silver casing that contains the gunpowder with a firing pin at the end of the casing. So when the trigger is pulled, the bullet obviously goes through the barrel of the gun, and on a semi-automatic gun, a casing is ejected from the gun.
So sort of in layman's terms, the casing holds the bullet that's fired?
Yes, sir, in layman's terms, yes.
Did you also submit any evidence related from Tamisha Brown's vehicle?
Yes.
Did you also submit any casings or other evidence collected from the suspect vehicle, meaning the vehicle taken from Shatoya Williams?
Yes, sir, we did.
Did you also submit DNA swabs collected from the firearms casings in Shatoya Williams' vehicle?
Yes, we did.
And that included any swabbing from the interior driver's door of the suspect vehicle?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Did you also submit a DNA sample of Aiden McClendon that was collected by the medical examiner during the autopsy?
Yes, we did.
So these things that we're talking about that were collected, did you submit these to FDLE for firearms testing as applicable?
As applicable to firearms or to DNA, depending on what we were submitting. Yes, sir, we did.
And FDLE has the specially trained people who analyze the evidence that you submit.
Absolutely.
In addition to FDLE, did you also submit the swabs from the Glock 26 to DNA Labs International for testing?
Yes, we did.
And why is that?
At the time, DNA Labs International had a more sophisticated method for analyzing the DNA, so the decision was made that we would submit this evidence to DNA Labs International, which is a private firm located in South Florida.
In this advanced testing method, are you aware that's called Star Mix?
I'm aware it's called Star Mix, yes, sir.
All right, did you also submit DNA samples collected from certain individuals related to your investigation?
Yes, sir, we did.
And related to that, that means you actually collected DNA samples from individuals related to this case.
That's correct.
When we talk about that you collected a DNA sample from a person, what does that mean?
Basically, when I collect a DNA sample, I will have two cheek swabs, which essentially look like a long Q-tip. I put latex gloves on. I will open the end that the Q-tip is not on, so where the Q-tip will be at the bottom. I open the top of that. I ask the person that I'm collecting the swab from to remove it, swab the inside of their cheek, and then I have them put it back in the original packet. This is done twice. Typically, I have them do it on each cheek. I then have them placed in a manila envelope where I seal the manila envelope with evidence tape, and I write their name on it in front of them so they know that that's their DNA being collected.
And then the collection of the DNA for analysis actually comes from the scrubbing of the inside of the cheek?
That's correct.
Now, I want to ask you about some of the individuals that you collected DNA samples from during your investigation. So we already discussed that you had the DNA sample from Aiden McClendon that you got from the medical examiner's office.
Yes, sir.
And then did you collect a DNA sample from Cynthia Hayes?
I did.
And why is that?
Cynthia Hayes was in the vehicle at the time, February 7th, at the time the Glock 26 was recovered.
Did you also obtain a DNA sample from Henry Hayes III?
I did.
That's the father of Henry Hayes, the defendant?
Yes, sir.
And why was that?
Because it was his vehicle.
Did you also obtain a DNA sample from Montego Tico Brown?
Yes, sir, I did.
And why was that?
Because his name kept coming up in the investigation, and he is a known PCE member.
Did you also obtain a DNA sample from Kobe Kojak Norris?
Yes, sir, I did.
Why did you obtain a DNA sample from him?
Again, his name had come up in the investigation, and he's a known PCE member.
Did you also collect a DNA sample from Sanquan Bradford?
I did.
And why was that?
Because, again, his name kept coming up in the investigation.
Did you also collect and submit a DNA sample related to Henry Hayes before?
Yes, sir, I did.
The defendant in this case?
Correct.
Did you also obtain and submit a DNA sample related to Kwame Richardson?
Yes, sir, I did.
And why did you collect DNA samples from those two?
For the same reason. Their names kept coming up in the investigation, and we collect these samples and have them tested for the inclusion or exclusion of being a suspect or related to the case.
When you say inclusion or exclusion, what are you talking about?
Inclusion is their DNA is found to be on something, or exclusion, their DNA is found not to be on something without me testing.
We have lost. And I think it's okay for us to say, long live Tony Green.
Amen. Long live Tony Green.
Long live.
Long live
Tony Green.
Tony Green.
Long live.
Long live
Tony Green.
Tony Green.
I'm here with
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Nope, you dropped them.
Gentlemen, may I publish one of the juries so they can see what it was I was talking about related to swabs?
You may, yes, sir.
Your Honor, for the record, I showed the jury statements in 364 related to Montego Brown. Related to your investigation, did you actually come into possession of a phone belonging to Sanquon Bradford?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you conduct what's known, or attempt to conduct what's known as a phone download with that phone?
Yes, sir.
What type of information is gathered through a phone download?
Our computer forensics unit will conduct a phone download, and typically what's obtained is call log history, a contact list, depending on what type of phone. If it's a smartphone, sometimes it'll web browsing history, text messages, things of that nature.
Now, with regard to Sanquon Bradford's phone, did you have difficulties with the download, so they had to actually screenshot the information contained on it?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Did you also obtain a search warrant for Henry Crackerjack Hayes' cell phone and the records associated with Mr. Hayes' cell phone?
Yes, sir, I did.
After obtaining that search warrant, did you have a download performed by the JSO homicide crime analyst?
It was actually the JSO computer forensics unit, but yes, sir, I did.
And so they actually had the phone itself and did a download of it?
Correct.
Were you able to conduct a phone download of Kwame Richardson's phone?
No, sir, I was not.
Why is that?
Because I never had his phone, and I did not learn until I received his phone records some months later that the phone number that I had for him was not activated until February 1st of 2016.
After the date of the homicide?
Correct.
Could I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I did have one other question, Detective Scott. I meant to ask you, there was a cell phone that was evidence number 12. Is that the cell phone that belonged to Jordan Harris?
Yes, sir, I believe it was.
That's all the questions I have at this time, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the jury is for cross-examination. I'm going to let Mr. Hernandez go first. So, folks in the Richardson jury, if you can once again go back to the jury room, we'll be back with you in just a moment. Ms. Crawford, if you can lead them out. All right, let the record reflect that the Richardson jury has left the courtroom. Mr. Hernandez, you may cross-examine.
Good afternoon, Detective Scott.
Good morning, sir. Or afternoon.
Yeah, just a few minutes after, right?
Okay.
Good seeing you again.
Good to see you too, sir.
The photo spread lineup done by JSO, y'all try to be as fair as possible, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
When you do a six-pack, you have 6 individual photos, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And y'all try to get them to look as similar to the suspect as possible, right?
Yes, sir. I would say that's accurate. If there's facial hair, for example, or we try to get the same style hair, things like that, yes, sir.
Okay. That's because, in other words, if you've got a Caucasian suspect, you're not going to put the suspect in the photo spread with 5 African-American photos, are you?
No, sir, I would not.
Okay. And then whenever you do the photo spread, you tell the person that's reviewing the photo spread that the suspect may or may not be in the photo spread, right?
Yes, sir. We have actually written instructions of what we read when we present a photo spread.
Right. And you go by those written instructions, right?
Yes, sir, we do.
And that's to be fair, is that correct?
It's to be fair, yes, sir.
What you testified to in direct for the location of the vehicle on the driveway, that was through your conversation with the mother, is that right?
Correct.
In other words, several days later or the next day, you didn't have the mother meet you out at the grandmother's house and say, where was your vehicle when you initially took fire, did you?
No, sir, I did not meet her at the scene.
Okay. In the estimated location of the vehicle, you didn't do a measurement from the estimated location of the vehicle to Albert Street, is that right?
I don't recall if the evidence technicians did that or not. No, sir.
That might be a question better asked for that evidence technician, right?
Could be.
Okay, good enough. The interview with my client took about 4 hours, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I believe that's about accurate. As far as when we do a interview, we do what we call door-to-door, where the recording device is turned on prior to them entering the room and not turned off till after we leave the room. So we may not be in with the person we're interviewing the entire time, but it is being recorded the entire time.
Okay. Well, am I accurate on the total amount of time?
As far as the recording goes?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My client was 16 at the time, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Was his father in with the interview also?
He did show up, yes, sir, eventually.
I know, but did he participate in the interview? Was he sitting beside his son during the interview?
During a brief portion of it, he was.
Okay, about how long was that?
An approximate time?
Yes.
I could approximately say 10 minutes.
Okay. Whenever you said there was nothing of evidentiary value at the gate station at 45th and Moncrief, another fair way to say it is that you didn't see my client in that video. Is that correct?
I think the fairest way to say it is you could tell that there was white vehicles and that there was people moving around, but you could not identify who was moving around. So I think the fairest way to explain it is I can't say whether or not he was there due to the recording and not being able to identify individual faces or models of cars, that kind of thing.
Okay, so basically you were able to identify that the car was white, but you couldn't even identify the model of the car. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. The only picture you showed, the mother, whenever she came down to the police memorial building, was the picture that she had emailed you. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The interview of my client, did it take place at the detention center off of 8th Street for juveniles, or did it take place at the main police memorial building?
At the police memorial building.
Your Honor, I have no other questions.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Hayes' jury, I'll have you go back to the jury room for just a little bit. And if you're getting hungry, we're going to be breaking for lunch here as soon as we're finished with this witness, okay? All right, Ms. Crawford, you can bring in Mr. Richardson's jury. All right, let the record reflect Mr. Hayes' jury has left the courtroom.
The jury is entering the courtroom.
All right, welcome back, and folks, you can take your seats. Ms. Wright, cross.
Detective Scott, you indicated that Ms. Brown told you that the individual who was on the front passenger side of the vehicle had a mask on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And she gave you no other description as to complexion. Is that also true?
That's correct.
Now, you indicated that you spoke with a Jamari Brooks. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You recall what date that was?
I would have to review my report to give you the exact date.
Okay. Do you know if it was the night of this incident?
No, sir. Or no, ma'am. It wasn't the night of the incident.
Now, when you spoke with Mr. Brooks, do you recall him telling you that he was driving by real fast when he saw this white car?
No, ma'am. I don't recall him saying that at all.
Okay. Do you recall him saying that he really didn't know the second person who was out there?
No, ma'am. He identified who was out there.
And he told you that he knew both of those individuals. Is that correct?
He identified them as Cracker Jack and JB. Yes, ma'am.
That he knew both of them.
Yes, he identified them. Yes, ma'am.
You know why Mr. Brooks would come in and say he didn't know the second person who was out there?
No, I do not.
Now, you indicated that Mr. Bradford sent you that kite in August 2016, is that correct? Or the note, I guess, the note, the request.
The inmate request form, yes, ma'am.
Okay, how long had he been in jail at that time?
A few months. I couldn't give you the exact amount without reviewing the information.
Okay, so he'd been there for a few months, and had he attempted to give you any information prior to this?
Not to the best of my recollection.
And you in fact had spoken to him at least on one occasion, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you testified on direct examination that Mr. Richardson activated his phone on February 1st, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. Mr. Richardson didn't have a phone until February 1st, is that correct?
I cannot say that, no, ma'am. I'm just saying with the phone records that I obtained, that phone was activated on February 1st.
Okay. Now, you did have some information for a phone number connected to Mr. Richardson prior to February 1st, is that correct?
I did not have any information. I asked my crime analysis unit to attempt to identify a phone number for him prior to that.
And the number you had was his mother's number, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you attempt any analysis on that phone number?
No, ma'am, I did not.
And it wasn't like Mr. Richardson had a phone and turned it off and then turned it back on February 1st. You just don't have any information that he had a phone prior to that, is that correct?
I don't know whether he had a phone or not prior to that.
I don't have any further questions.
All right, Mr. Hutton, redirect.
If I heard it correctly, I believe counsel insinuated that Jamari Brooks at some point stated that he couldn't recognize the second individual at the gate gas station? Has he ever said that to you?
No, sir, he hasn't said that to me.
At any point or at any time during this investigation?
No, when I initially interviewed him, he was very clear.
As far as related to the phone for Kwame Richardson, and you were asked about his mother's cell phone, did you have any information, receive any information at all during the investigation that Kwame Richardson was using his mother's phone?
No, sir, I did not.
I don't have any other questions.
Yes, ma'am.
You only interviewed Mr. Brooks one time, is that correct?
Yes, one time, but then I saw him again later at the state attorney's office.
All right, you have redirect, I guess. Do you have brief redirect on Mr. Hayes?
Nothing else in me.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, just retire back to the jury room. We'll be right back with you in just a few minutes, okay? If you could bring in Mr. Hayes' jury. Did you have redirect? Okay. Then I'm going to break for lunch then. All right. Y'all can take your seats. So you had no redirect, Mr. Hutton. All right. Then, Ms. Crawford, if you don't mind getting the Richardson jury back, we're going to break for lunch. I was going to tell them what time to come back.
You want me to ask one question? I thought I'd already done the redirect, but then I'm getting confused with the jury.
Had Ms. Crawford, Ms. Golding's had Ms. Crawford hold them out. Yes, sir. You all can take your seats.
May I proceed, John?
Yes.
Now, Detective Scott, related to the questions about the photo spread and the Facebook photo, in today's day and age, is this unusual that you run into potential victims who are able to identify someone from Facebook?
Yes, sir. Through my 6-year career in homicide, I notice more and more of people identifying people through Facebook and social media. Social media has become so prevalent that that we see that more and more. So sometimes they bring something prior to me knowing it. So yes, I would say that's accurate. Yes, sir.
So in today's day and age, the photos are readily available and people can access them and look themselves.
Yes, sir, but because social media is so prevalent out there with Facebook, et cetera, that absolutely, I would say that's correct.
I don't have any further questions, Your Honor.
All right, bring in the Richardson jury, please.
The jury is entering the courtroom.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, don't get too comfortable. We're going to break for lunch now. I just want to bring y'all back and tell you, I obviously continue to abide by my instructions about discussing the case or looking up information. Do enjoy your lunch and be back at 1:45. We'll continue with the trial. All right, let the record reflect both juries have left the courtroom. May this witness be excused? Or is he subject to recall? All right, Detective Scott, you're excused, but subject to recall.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.